GM, I wanted to jump on and do a little video for the article I wrote last night. Came out this morning. What is the optimal Astros lineup now? And really, folks, I wanted to do this more kind of to explain some of the process I went through relative to that article, and give you guys some context. So, um, we're gonna jump right into it. I'm not expecting folks to show up here. I didn't publicize I was going live, but we're just gonna run through the article and talk about some of the things I was trying to communicate in that article. Okay, so let's go. Number one, the Astros have an opportunity now with John Singleton on the team to do some more creative things with their lineup, and I will say that that creativity is going to be based on understanding um, how the batters in the Astros lineup match up with the starting pitcher of the other team. The starting pitcher, left-hander or right-hander, that'll have some consequences. I show you the ex-wobas of the players on this team, um, based on whether or not the starting pitcher is right-hander or left-hander. Then I gave you guys what I perceive, or what, if you were to look at the recent lineup choices that Dusty Baker's made. These are what I think are what I would call his normal lineup versus a lefty, and there's two versions of his lineup versus righty. Whether or not Diaz is catching versus the right-handed starting pitcher, or if Maldonado is catching, and some consequences. Now, neither one of these are the two lineups he's using today, I don't think, when I quickly looked at it, but that's generally choices that he's making. Um, but one of the other things I say in this article, and I want to get into this detail here, is it's not only whether or not the pitcher's left-handed or right-handed; it's whether that pitcher is a fastball dominant pitcher, a breaking ball dominant pitcher, or an off-speed pitch. So is he throwing, you know, four-seam fastballs, sinkers, fastball pitches, or is he throwing sliders or curveballs, or is he throwing changeups? And I guess split fingers are in the category of off speed pitches. So when you understand that the Astros players, the Astros batters, perform differently based on whether or not the pitcher um, is a fastball pitcher, or is he throwing a lot of breaking balls, or is he an off speed pitch, then you start to understand maybe a strategy for how this team should match up with those pitchers. So go through there's the detailed data relative to the catchers, and basically what this is showing you is that Diaz should be playing, despite what the manager is saying about Diaz not being able to hit left-handed pitchers. If you understand what an ex-WOBA is, and that it's based on the quality of contact, um, that batted ball is coming out, you will realize that actually Diaz has been very unlucky versus left-handed pitchers. It's not that he's a bad hitting them. And so therefore, but the other thing that's interesting is that Maldonado is actually very good against left-handed pitchers too. So in my world, Maldonado would be starting versus left-handed pitchers, especially if those pitchers were breaking ball pitchers and off-speed pitchers. Um, Now, I would probably have them platoon where basically Maldonado was playing against all left-handed pitchers, and Diaz was playing first base against the breaking ball pitchers and the off-speed pitchers. And then, you know that then we have this conversation. We try to figure out who do we think's hotter, if we're facing a left-handed fastball pitcher, um, for for Diaz, or whether he should play or not. Now, the reality is that when I talk about these things and I get into near the end of it, it's never quite clear that there's pitchers that aren't they don't fall into one of these categories. So it's a hybrid. So the team probably would do similar to what I do and have done in the postseason for the last couple of years, is do a grid of the actual pitches, how that player's done versus those pitches, and do a prediction of who would have the better predicted xwOBA versus that starting pitcher stuff and the quality of their stuff. That's really what I think the team actually does. But when we talk, okay, so let's jump. So those left-handed starting pitchers versus a catcher. If you look at the right-handed, there's almost no scenario that Martin Maldonado should ever be starting a game versus a right-handed starting pitcher. Sorry, that's what the data says. Okay, and the cult probably will clip that and come after me for it. When we look at first base, you can see the data for Abreu. Abreu is only basically good right now against fastball pitchers, whether they're right-handed or left-handed. But if there's a fastball dominant pitcher, if it's a pitcher that is going to throw predominantly fastballs, or that's really his only great pitches. So if we're facing a terrible curveball pitcher, that guy's even with Abreu's stats here, that guy's probably not going to throw too many curveballs to Abreu. So what we're really saying is that, hey, if there's a pitcher that's fastball dominant, and by default, most pitchers are fastball dominant, Abreu should be playing first base. Um, and then, as we showed before in the catcher data, Diaz should be playing against right-handed pitchers, but he should be catching in those times, and then he should be playing first base against a breaking and off-speed pitch. Now you can look at this data and say, well, wait a minute, what about breaking and off-speed pitch right-handed pitchers? Well, that's where Singleton comes in. Now, there's no xwOBA data uh, there's not enough data to be credible to even look at some of this analysis with. Um, and so we just have to go by default that Singleton's been really good this year in the minors versus right-handed pitchers, and therefore we're going to put Singleton in versus the breaking and off-speed pitch right-handed pitchers, because the alternative is Abreu, who's been terrible against those pitchers, as we've documented a few times on the website. All right, so to go to shortstop, similar mix here. Okay, so versus the left-handed pitchers, if they're fastball dominant pitchers, the answer should be Pena. If they're off-speed pitchers, the answer should be um, Dubon. And if they're breaking pitchers, it could be either one. Okay, and that's kind of the way it works. Right-handed pitchers, again, fastball pitchers should be Pena. Off-speed pitches, it should be Dubon, and then it the data's not great for either one of those against off breaking pitches, but breaking ball pitchers. But I would choose Dubon in that category. So I said Pena here. I think in the detailed data that's about to show up, I actually have Dubon playing some other roles. Okay, center field. Well, center field's a little bit of a challenge. So McCormick, who's had a great year, don't think anything. And part of that is these numbers are huge expected wOBA numbers versus fastball pitchers. Why anybody throws McCormick a fastball at this point? It's kind of crazy. Um, but he's not that. I mean, relative to the fastballs, he's not as great against breaking ball pitchers or against off-speed pitchers. But I would say, compare that to Jake Myers. Well, Jake Myers is also great against fastball pitchers. So the answer really versus a left-handed fastball pitcher, they both should be playing, and McCormick should be in left field, and Jake Myers should be in right, or should be in center. Against breaking ball pitchers, it should be Jake Myers in center field, and McCormick may be coming off the bench that day. And against off-speed pitchers, if you go back up here, the answer maybe Dubon, but then the problem is but you have to choose, like, well, Pena's numbers against off-speed pitches are better than either one of these two, or either one of the center fielders. So the answer really might be, hey, I let Pena play against the off-speed dominant pitchers, righty and lefty. I have Dubon play center field. Now, Dusty is playing Dubon again in center field today. we're gonna see if they're gonna continue to do this. I I hope not, but I mean, and I'm gonna say Flattery is not really an off-speed pitch dominant pitcher, so doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He's really more of a fastball or a breaking ball pitcher, is what you would say for him. So this is where these tables are interacting. So they said, all right, well, let's put together the best lineup for these pitchers, for these types of pitchers. Okay, so this is the data that's in the article, and I'm going to jump over to the actual spreadsheet that I cut this data from. And versus the left-handed pitchers, you can see the lineup, and the players in yellow here are pretty much stuck in these spots. I may change the order up just based on some usage of Dubon or Pena in the earlier part of the lineup. But here, the point is that these are the spots that these players should be in, or those players are playing basically under all circumstances. Now we look at the pitcher. We look at the different categories: fastball dominant, left-handed pitchers. As we said, McCormick should be playing. Look at the 422. Abreu should be playing at first base. Myers should be playing in center field. Pena should be playing at shortstop, and then Maldonado versus that because you have you give Diaz the day off versus the left-handed fastball dominant pitcher. Let Maldonado in my platoon would be Maldonado plays versus the left-handed starting pitchers. Okay, so that's the lineup I would use. Now I'm showing Diaz in green here because he's an option for that. That lineup, the starting nine would have an expected WOBA of 375. That is that's versus a league average of like 319, guys. That's a tremendous lineup. It also says something that you may have already known that the Astros are really, really good against hitting the fastball. Look at all the red here, guys. I mean, this team is full of really great fastball hitting pitchers, fastball hitting hitters, right? And so we look at the breaking ball dominant pitchers, and the story gets a little bit changed. And we actually are going to want Maldonado at catcher. We're going to want Diaz to be playing first base. We're going to want Pena at shortstop, and we're going to want Myers at center field. And then we're going to keep the top four. They're going to have Chas McCormick just kind of by default because the data is just not great for anybody else. We'll have McCormick in left field. Now, people can say, well, what about the defense of all this? I mean, guys, the reality is there's not a great defensive first baseman on this team. I don't know. I don't know who we were going to look around and say, well, that's a much better defensive first baseman. We can argue that maybe that's Diaz, but the manager doesn't think he's a great defensive first baseman. Singleton's never been by reputation a great defensive first baseman. So, um, you know, and my perception of Jeremy Pena and Dubon at short is pretty much at this point they're pretty equal. And so I'm not gonna tweak things either way. Let me jump over to the spreadsheets here because I think it's let me zoom. Let me make it a little bigger for everybody. All right, that's not showing up. I mean, yeah, okay. Let me share that. So all right, here we go. Versus the left-handed pitchers, you can see the breaking ball dominant. Let me click on this and you'll see it in order. And you can see the lineup. You can see trying to use as much of the red as possible. Now, yes, Jake Myers is a better defensive center fielder than Chas McCormick. Not by much. I mean, Chas McCormick is a good defensive center fielder as well. Chaz in left field is just fine. So this lineup versus the breaking ball dominant pitchers is 353. Now we go over to the off speed pitch. There's not enough. Obviously, there's not as many off speed pitches being thrown in Major League Baseball as there are fastballs. There's more sliders and curveballs than there are off speed pitches. So the data set for a player like Altuve who hasn't played all season and a player like Alvarez who's been hurt, there's the data is not consistent with their career performance. So I've eliminated that. Um, what I show here is that there's no great answer for some of these spots. You see that um, Myers is bad versus off-speed pitchers. McCormick's not good. Abreu's not good. So we basically are defaulted, as I kind of previewed, put Dubon in at center field versus the off-speed pitchers. Now I can hear everybody say he's a terrible center fielder. I mean, I think he's going to have to work on it. Maybe that's what Dusty's giving him a chance to do right now. Um, but then you see the rest of the lineup where you got a Diaz is really good versus the off speed pitchers. Tucker's really good. Basically, I say for first base, I don't know what you do. I have no data that says you should play Singleton versus an off speed pitch, left-handed pitch, left-handed pitcher. But maybe that's the answer. I mean, the other option would be, and you guys are this is going to blow your mind, but the answer at first base versus off-speed pitch because off-speed pitcher because we know Abreu's just been terrible, and we know Singleton's left-handed, so you probably and it has pretty bad platoon splits. You you might want to go with Gray Kessinger at first base. That's what that shows, and that I know that's just gonna blow your mind, and you think I'm crazy, and maybe so, yeah. But there and there's the rest of the lineup. I mean, this lineup versus the off-speed dominant pitchers is not as good um, as the other ones, and that kind of tells me something that I think I've seen this season when the Astros are facing either breaking ball pitchers or off-speed pitchers. You know, if you got a guy that's throwing changeups and sliders then as his main pitches, that's a problem for this team a lot of the times. And there's the data that kind of backs that up. All right, let's go down to the right-hander pitchers because obviously there's more right-handers than left-handers. And so if you look at the fastball pitchers, and you see how amazing this lineup is against a right-handed fastball dominant pitcher. It's red all the way down to 9, 1 through 9, all red. Assuming the Astros start playing Diaz at catcher. Play Maldonado at catcher, you're getting a really bad performance out of Maldonado versus a right-handed starting pitcher. Period. And so that's why I just say, look, this team is going to have to make a choice at some point to start playing Maldonado very sparingly against right-handed pitchers. Um, and roll with Diaz. You can see the stats here. It's just this team should just rake when Maldonado's not in the lineup versus a right-handed fastball pitcher. I mean, you got guys on the bench. I mean, Corey Jokes is down in the minors right now, but he was doing equally great against fastball pitchers as well. So you know, you got John Singleton here. He's going to rake and the data for Singleton is just based on a projection of his ex Boba versus from his AAA data. So this is not a real data number here, but you can see it should be really good. All right, let's go breaking ball dominant pitchers. Again, this lineup this team struggles more with the junk pitchers. You see all the players, you know, Abreu's bad, Pena's bad, Maldonado's bad, Kessinger's bad, Jokes was bad. You know, they just it's not a pretty sight versus right-handed pitchers. And you can see, you know, I've got Altuve, Bregman, both are not great. Alvarez is amazing. And then Tucker, I put McCormick, Singleton in there. Then Diaz is in limited data set versus right-handed breaking pitchers has not been great. Myers is okay, and Dubon. So you can see the choices you make, playing Dubon over Pena, and letting Myers play with McCormick, and sitting Abreu and Maldonado and Pena. So that those are the choices that one makes as he goes through this. Look at the off-speed pitch, and this is really the way to look at this data, guys. And I struggle to try to get this across in the article. You can see it's kind of a mixed bag here. Oh, let me before I move on, projected WOBA of that lineup versus off-speed pitchers is a below average 312. This team versus a right-handed pitcher that is curveball, slider dependent, or has really good curveballs and sliders. So tonight, when we're facing Flaherty, expect to see a lot. Expect to see his normal percentage of sliders and curveballs to go up tonight, because other teams know this too. Okay. Um, Off speed dominant pitchers. You can see again the data is not really great for Altuve. Really not good for Bregman, which is really concerning for me for Bregman. I don't know what's going on there. But you see that you got some good data for Tucker and for Diaz, and of course for Alvarez. Dubon's really good versus the off-speed pitches. Singleton, we're gonna project is gonna be good versus a right-handed pitcher. And then we're kind of forced into playing McCormick because the other options aren't great, and then playing Pena because again the other options aren't great. So we actually put Dubon in center field, McCormick in left field, and then you could switch that. You could choose to put McCormick in center and Dubon in left. That may be the better choice. Um, we got Myers, Abreu, and Maldonado really just aren't startable choices against an off-speed pitch dominant pitcher. All right, so that's the kind of things, the conclusions you can go through. Is the puzzle becomes like, well, what kind of pitcher are we facing tonight? And that's more complicated than it probably sounds, right? I have a, I don't know if I even called it up here. Yeah. So here's my data set. I got over 650 pictures in this data set. Um, and I can show you for any single pitcher, I can give you the breakdown of that breaking fastball off speed pitch, what the percentage of their pitches are, and then how the expected WOBA is. I just pulled that data yesterday. So we can look at every one of these pitchers, but I mean, let's jump to tonight's pitcher, right? Well, there's the data for tonight's pitcher. He pitches 44% breaking pitches at a basically close to league average 314, and he's throwing 53% fastballs at a 394 expected WOBA. Now, maybe I should get this data versus righties and versus lefties. That just makes the compounding of that pivot table pretty challenging. Um, and he only throws off speed pitches 3.1 and is very effective when he does. So, what is Flaherty? Is he a fastball pitcher or is he a breaking ball pitcher? I think some of the choices the Astros have made with the lineup today is telling you they're more concerned about this than they are this. And that may just be because they have confidence that almost most of their batters can hit fastballs, and they're trying to put into the lineup the counteract Flaherty's choices that he's going to go with the sliders and curves tonight. So this is the game within the game. This is stuff that when you get Clinton and I talking, we'll get into these rabbit holes, and this is the game within the game. This is the understanding of why things are happening on the field, or why teams are making the choices they're making. And that's why I wanted to get to this article about the optimal Astros lineup. Guys, there is no single optimal Astros lineup because on top of all this hitting data, you can say, well, what about the defense? Where's the defense going to fail when we've got Framber Valdez on the mound? Does Framber Valdez, as a ground ball pitcher, change some of the answers we may come to on the offensive side? The answer may be very well yes, and be more important. So when the Astros make a lineup announcement, ask yourself, one, is the starting pitcher we're facing left-handed or right-handed? So left-handed, you can look at the data at the top table. Right-handed data in the bottom table. Is that pitcher a fastball dominant pitcher, or a breaking pitch dominant pitcher, or an off-speed pitch? If you don't know where that data is, it's in a Baseball Savant, and you can just call up what kind of pitchers they've been throwing. Um, you can look at it yourself, or we can have a conversation about it. Like, okay, well, this pitcher is like Flaherty, and it's like it's not really clear. Maybe that pitcher we're gonna treat them even though they have thrown more fastballs, we're going to be concerned about the breaking pitch lineup. All right, so right-handed breaking pitcher. This would, like, all right. If that's the case, then this lineup would be the lineup I would choose. Well, they're not playing Singleton. They're not playing Diaz. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. They're not making the choices I would make. But you can kind of understand if they're really worried about the off speed. No, I mean the breaking pitches, why they may choose to sit Diaz on a day like today versus just default position. But Diaz has to start versus every right-handed pitcher. Well, okay, maybe not on a day like today. The problem is, like, you're starting Martin Molinado, who's a train wreck, versus right-handed pitchers. So I think it's really problematic to have him in there. All right, so there's the article. I'm gonna if anybody, I see some people are here. If you want to ask a question, I got the chat open. You can ask a question or two, and we'll go over it. But that's what I wanted to get out, explaining a little bit behind the details of the optimal Nationals lineup. Hopefully that makes it a little more clear to you that these choices are not as easy. It's really easy to get on Twitter or on X or on Facebook and say, well, they should be playing the players I want them to play. Well, hang on. Ask yourself, number one, left-hander, right-hander, what's his dominant pitch style? And then look at the Astros lineup. And who's hot? Do they need who are the Astros pitching? And therefore, what kind of defensive model do we need versus that? Okay, guys. And I got last call for questions or comments. And if not, I will shut it down. And thank you for joining those that jumped on, because you guys obviously subscribe to the channel. So let me ask before we get off, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the Larry the GM website. Please also join me on Patreon as a $5 a month supporter that helps fund the work I do and will help us get the word out more and more. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Larry the GM or at Larry the GM Man. If you want just the site account, it's at Larry the GM. If you want to interact with me, it's Larry the GM Man, where I give you more of my thoughts and details of what we're talking about. All right, so thanks, guys, and hopefully you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you soon. Bye.